McWayne in Chino Valley, Arizona, watching us on Free Speech TV. McWayne, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Congressman Pocan. I'm wondering if you might have an explanation for the Republicans' worship of extreme wealth and power and the military, and if you know how many of the children Navy SEAL Owens killed before his heroic death.
So I hopefully I'm answering the question correctly, McQueen, for you. But I think what you're asking is, on the GP in general, why is it that they have this penchant for one, worrying most about the top 1% and 2% rather than the rest of us, including their constituents, and two, the buildup of the military that they are kind of continually trying to put forward. On the wealth side, I mean, this is something where this is the people who fund their campaigns. This is the people lately who run for office. I mean, it used to be people bought hobby farms. Now they run for Congress, right? So half of my colleagues are millionaires here. I'm not saying that you can't connect if you're a millionaire, but many of these people don't connect because their heads are in a different place. When you think about Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago, very different than the rest of the country. So it's just, that's the funding that they get to keep them in power. It's part of their coalition, and that's why they make sure that they deliver a return on that investment by those people. On military, a lot of it is, I think, a lot of the industrial military complex, and especially the companies that make a lot of these weapons, are very profitable companies, and a lot of people make a lot of money, and they put a lot of money into campaigns. Goes back to that again, right? The same issue. And the fact that they want to put all this money in right now at a time that, we finally were getting some benefits out of not having as much money. And, the Progressive Caucus has long had stances that, would not only reduce the amount of money we spend on defense, but do a whole lot of other things like auditing the Pentagon, reducing some of the base Pentagon spending, so we can, finally start moving in the right direction. And this takes us exactly counter to doing that. So I think, a lot of almost any issue you look at, you follow the money. And in this particular case, whether it be the wealthiest who put the money in or the military budget that they increased for the companies that put a lot of money into campaigns, it all goes back to that.
Could there be, we just have a minute to the break here, could there be a psychological component to this, too, that in fetishizing great wealth, they're essentially echoing, John Calvin, a Calvinistic worldview, which is the epicenter of that, of course, is Grand Rapids and the DeVos family. But, well, actually, I don't know if the DeVosses are Calvinists, but, the headquarters of the Calvinist churches in Grand Rapids, I was born there, I'm familiar with it. And that theory is that, we have to have leaders who are blessed by God. How do we know who God blesses? Oh, rich people, they must be blessed by God. So that would be why they're worshiping riches. And then worshiping the military. John Dean has been on this program many, many times over the years talking about the authoritarians. He wrote this book, Conservatives Without Conscience, that there's this authoritarian mindset that wants to follow an authoritarian leader.
I think both of those are the natural impulses that make them more inclined to those positions, but have those groups not put money into the campaigns and fund them, I'm sure they wouldn't be at the same level of attention they're getting. Yeah,
they would be more marginalized.
Yeah, makes them predisposed, let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that John Dean said that it's 20 to 30% of the population are authoritarians. A fraction of that are authoritarian leaders, the majority of them authoritarian followers. And the Calvinist thing, I mean, that's infecting even mainstream megachurches and stuff. This old prosperity gospel. It's totally bizarre. Clifton in Roscoe, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, I am interested in infrastructure. After watching President Trump speak last night, they and the Republicans and Mr. Trump, they would like to build infrastructure. Now, traditionally, infrastructure has been handled by public funds, which are funds of we the taxpayers. And I've always had a question as to why they would want to involve private industry, private companies who are out for profit in that process to do infrastructure. Because if they do, it would seem to me that the private companies are only in it for a profit motive. So therefore, we the taxpayers would pay more in some way, shape, or form. And I'd like to know your thoughts on that, Congressman.
Clifton, dead on. That's our problem. We all, if the infrastructure package is investing in roads and bridges and schools and broadband infrastructure and things like that, We would be very supportive. We put public dollars there, create good family-supporting jobs, reinvest in our country. We would be inclined to support the initiatives they have. The problem is you heard the same language I did in public and private investment. So I think they're trying to do is claim they're creating jobs without putting any real federal resources in, because that would require tax dollars, and they want to lower taxes on the most wealthy in this country. And instead, they're going to trade off probably some things that we wouldn't want to trade off by allowing those private funds to do some of the infrastructure building. So one, it means you're not going to have a real infrastructure investment like we had when we had the Recovery Act, and I wish we had even more of it at the time. But two, you're going to now take some of these public goods and public services and perhaps put them into the private realm, and you're going to be paying for it there rather than paying through it with tax dollars. Just so those wealthiest get a break. So I think one of the things you're going to see when the Progressive Caucus puts out its budget, Tom, in a few weeks, a real serious investment in infrastructure so that we can have a real serious contrast of what packages are, because I think that the public supports reinvesting in our country, and they want everyone to pay for it, and I think that's not part of what Trump is putting out there.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, we know, for example, the Eisenhower interstate highway system has returned, somewhere between 110,000 times its original cost, and just in terms of added tax revenue, depending on whose numbers you're looking at and which year you're looking at it. We know that the GI Bill, just the college part, returns $7 for every dollar invested in educating people. So presumably, if they're going to go to private corporations and say, you put up the money, two things are going to happen. Number one, those private corporations are going to monetize these things. In other words, yes, we'll build you a road, but it's going to be a toll road, which means, number two, that over time, the private corporations are going to get that 100% return, 1,000% return, 700% return, rather than us. And number three, that those private corporations are not going to be interested in doing infrastructure that doesn't immediately produce those returns. So you're not going to be seeing things like reclaiming wetlands or, whatever. It's going to be stuff where you can easily exchange it basically privatize the commons and turn it into a money machine.
Absolutely. You said it perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hi. Except for Thom Hartmann's lone voice, no one has spoken out about Rubio destroying the risk corridors, which is the real reason why Obamacare is dying. Rubio didn't do anything directly to stop Obamacare. He made the American people spend billions of dollars out of their pockets to suffer, to make them think that Obamacare didn't work. Is there anything to do to restore those risk corridors, or are we going to go another path?
I think it's pretty clear last night, Bill, that they're going to go a different path, and the path they're going to go is going to give lip service to if you have a pre-existing condition, you'll be able to get affordable health care. But from what we're hearing in the various provisions that have been leaked, et cetera, they're talking about things like buying across state lines. They're talking about things that like health savings accounts. Again, if you have money, that's good for you. They're talking about things that'll be tax policy as opposed to direct subsidy. So again, it's going to make it difficult for those on the lower income spectrums to actually get health care. So while I completely agree with what you're saying on some of the problems that were the poison pills put into the Affordable Care Act, especially in the Senate side, I don't see this Congress fixing that. I see just the opposite. I see they're having a hard time right now finding a replacement, but they're going to put out something that's not going to be at all close to it. And we're going to have to make sure people understand. You have the diamond standard with the Affordable Care Act, maybe not full diamond, but a decent diamond. And then you have cubic zirconia that they're going to put out there that's going to look like it. In the end, if you really want health care, we'd do Medicare for all, and we could simplify the whole process. But that's clearly not on the table in the next few years.
It would also save us $504 billion in lost in recovered administrative costs and profits. It's amazing.
Think how much of that could be spent at Mar-a-Lago.
Denise in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Congressman, for all of your good. Congressman, in terms of the cross-checking and even the gerrymandering, why was there no one on the watch that could say when it was happening in the red states, this is happening, we need someone here to stop it, and what's the future goal so this won't happen all over again?
Denise, I'll tell you what happened, at least from my experience in Wisconsin. I can't speak for every state, but I think I can speak in general on this. It did happen. People pointed out this was going to happen, but it's not always the easiest to understand for the media to try to put into a simple story, and sometimes it's not the sexiest sort of subject area. Even when you look at polls, these issues don't always hit the top of the charts because there's so many other issues that seem to get the dominant amount of the news in the mainstream media. So our job, I think, is to elevate issues that are these overriding issues, things like campaign finance reform and gerrymandering and voting rights, because they really are at the core of a democracy and everything else follows after that. So I just think we have to raise the democracy as an issue in order to make it a higher profile for 2018 and 2020, not as that separate issue, which it's often been. But we've talked about it in Wisconsin. We've talked about it other places. The problem is it hasn't always been the top at moving voters because it just doesn't get the mainstream media attention, and that's always a challenge we have.
We have just 2 minutes left. Andy in Grand Rapids listening on WTRR. Andy, quick question for the Congressman?
Yeah, Congressman. Hey, I'm over here in Grand Rapids, and what Betsy's voucher program come up with is what they do is they give you a set amount of money for each student. That money follows you wherever you go. It could be, internet classes, so you've got elementary kids going to the internet to get an education. You're going to all the religious schools, plus, the public schools. But the public schools are the only ones that have to be tested to see how well the students are for possible loss of funding from the state or closure of the schools. Now, if she wants to bring that national, the way I look at it, the best thing for us to fight them back with is say, okay, you guys want to privatize, give vouchers out to schools. What's going to stop the Muslim schools teaching Sharia law, apparently? So can we actually say she's kind of supporting Sharia law?
I hear what you're saying, Andy. I hate to use their negative tone of things back, even though I know it's a good point that you're saying, right? Show the hypocrisy of what they're actually out there they're doing and saying. The problem is then you're falling into the somehow there's something wrong with being a Muslim. And
well, she is promoting the Christian version of Sharia law.
However, Andy, what you're saying is right, and I'm glad you brought up. It can go to internet schools. It can go to all these other schools. It's not just going to necessarily a private school, but it can go to all sorts of things that aren't really education, and all that does is take money away from public education, where you get the greatest good for the community by having strong public schools. So there are many fronts we're going to need to bring out on this, and luckily in Michigan, Andy, people like Debbie Dingell and Dan Kildee and John Conyers and Sandy Levin and others have been really, Brenda Lawrence, have been really outspoken on sharing your bad experiences with the rest of the country.
Yeah, and Senator Peters and Stabenow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Congressman Mark Pocan, you can reach him or you can visit his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep Mark Pocan, REPMARKPOCAN, or at Mark Pocan. And Congressman, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Tom. Always the best hour of the week.
Thank you. Me too. We'll see you again.